We'll get started in just a minute, folks. Okay, looks like a lot of folks are on, so I'm gonna get started. First of all, for those of you who don't know me or have seen me just a little bit on these calls, I'm Sean Henry. Sophia, who normally hosts these calls, is on vacation this week and next week. So you have to bear with me as I stumble through some of these things, but we'll do the best we can. We have a couple topics to go over this week, but I'll get to kind of the regular um, front matter first. Just a reminder. Welcome to Semantic Kernel office hours. We have regularly weekly office hours at this time slot, as well as monthly hours on the second Wednesday of every month, 4 to 5 PT, but mainly focused there on folks in Asia and Pacific, where that time zone's a little bit more, that time is a little bit more amenable to being awake and chat with us. Um, if you're interested in previous recordings or the invite for this calendar, that AKA link at the bottom can get you that information. This week, two big releases on both Python and .NET. We'll talk a little bit about those in a second. But going over some of the other stuff involved in Python, Common Agent runtime and our agent RC2. We'll talk about that in a second. Went into the release this week for 1.26. And then a number of bug fixes and enhancements also went in. One thing I'll call out as well is, we have samples and examples now for using Copilot Studio agents and Copilot Studio skills. So going from Copilot Studio into Semantic Kernel and from Semantic Kernel into Copilot Studio. This is a place where I think we want to continue to invest. You'll see more here going forward, but please take a look at those if you're interested in interoperability between Semantic Kernel and Copilot Studio agents. Same thing on the .NET side. Again, our RC release for RC2 release for agents is in here, as well as some updates and bug fixes across the board. Our structured data plugin is in its. I think this is the first PR for that into our main branch. That's worth checking out if you're interested in being able to access and talk to structured data from Semantic Kernel. I think we'll have more deep dive on that maybe next week in a blog post. But very interested in feedback on folks who are using that. Okay. I will talk only one blog post last week. Again, when Sophia's not here, things fall apart. We'll get some more blog posts out. There's a bunch in the queue. That's mainly on me to get those published. But the big one from last week is our RC2 release of the Semantic Kernel Agent Framework. If you've been following along, we have an agent framework that builds agent abstractions on top of Semantic Kernel, enabling you to build agents and multi-agent systems with our chat completion APIs, as well as being able to talk to services from AWS Bedrock, AutoGen, our own services within Azure with the Azure Agent Service, and being able to mix those together when building your agentic systems. So we released our RC2. We think this is our last release candidate. We definitely don't expect any change at this point. Please take a look. All the samples and documentation have been updated. We have a little bit more to do on the documentation side, I think, but the samples have definitely been updated, and the samples within the documentation are updated. So please take a look at those and let us know what you find. Take a look at that. We expect to go to GA very soon for that. Again, because we don't expect any major changes. And we know that's something that we hear a lot of folks wanting an agent framework that is stable and ready to be built on for your application. So we're very excited about that. And one of the changes that we made in there, Wesley's going to talk about in a second, around our common invocation patterns and what we're doing with chat threads. Actually, without further ado, maybe Wesley, I'll turn that over to you in the next slide. And if you want to cover the common agent invocation API,
sure,
that we've added.
Yeah, so we've been working on moving some invoke methods into the base agent class and implementing all of those for the different agents so that you can create different agents but invoke them with the same set of methods. That allows a really nice pattern that you can see on the right-hand side, where you can have code that takes in an agent as input, and it doesn't matter what kind of agent it is. You can communicate with that in the same way. What this requires, though, from us is being able to abstract away the different threading capabilities for different agents. So chat completion agents, for example, they typically require chat history to be managed externally. So for chat completion agents, we have a chat history thread that you can use with a chat completion agent. For the Azure AI Assistant, Azure OpenAI Assistant or OpenAI Assistant agent, we have an OpenAI Assistant thread that you can use with that, and it'll basically communicate with the service, make service calls in order to create a thread, delete the thread, upload messages, etc. And the value, though, I suppose, with something like chat completion agent is that in time we will be able to have different kinds of threads, not just one that stores the chat history and a chat history component inside of the thread. It could potentially be managed in a service that does automatic summarization and this kind of stuff. You could, there's a lot of opportunities there for doing something more. We also are thinking about adding memory onto a thread, memory components that can glean information and ideas from the messages that are in the thread and enhance it with more information. And so yeah, adopting this pattern allows us to do a lot of interesting things potentially in future. It also allows us to build more functionality on top of the generic agent that you will hopefully be seeing more of soon. That way, and in a way that doesn't require us to do this separately for each agent type. Sharon, do you want to go to the next slide? So just a very quick example here of this is the base agent thread type. All agent threads implement this. It's very simple. You can have an ID. Once it's created, you can check whether it's deleted, and you can delete it as well. Agent threads are created automatically on first usage. So it's not required to create them manually, although most of the agent thread types also allow you to pass in, when you create them, yourself, you can pass in settings, you can pass in an existing thread ID if you want to resume a thread that was created in a previous session. There's a lot of options there around how you use it. For the chat history agent thread that can be used with the chat completion agent, you can pass in your own chat history object with existing messages, and you can continue to manage that chat history yourself as well if you really wanted to. But it will also be exposed to the agent via the agent thread. Sean, do you want to go to the next slide, please? These are the methods we're exposing on the base agent class. There's 2 overloads for invoke, 2 for streaming. The different options are just single message or multiple message. If you don't want to pass a message here, you can pass in 0, like an empty collection to the second invoke. We also have the agent invoke options where you can pass in a kernel arguments and override, additional instructions for the agent for that invocation iteration. We're also working on something at the moment where on each concrete implementation of an agent, it will extend these methods to also allow agent-specific options with agent-specific parameters. That way, if you do want to drop out of the abstraction, you can use the same pattern to also pass in agent-specific parameters via the agent-specific options. Next slide, please. And here's just the agent invoke options that we have at the moment. But like I say, following soon will be agent-specific invoke options that can be used on the concrete implementations of each agent type. Yeah, that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, I'll just pause there for seconds for questions. We have some more topics to discuss, and then we'll do general Q&A after that. But any questions on this in particular, Rasmus? I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you can go back one slide. I've been trying to migrate to this, and yeah, you mentioned today that you could put in an empty collection on number 2 of these. That is very unintuitive, to be honest. Is there any reason why we haven't made one where we only get an agent thread, so we can put in the chat history agent thread instead? Because this way, it seems like you need to always give the last message to the invoke async. You cannot prepare it in a chat history / chat agent thread. That felt very strange in order to migrate, at least.
Yeah, that's good feedback. We can definitely have a look at changing that or introducing a version that doesn't require chat message content. Note though that the idea with the pattern is that you would typically have the conversation via invoke async. So with every invocation, you would pass in what the user was saying. The idea isn't typically that you would go somewhere else to add the message and then call invoke. It's just the two steps that feel kind of unnecessary when you can do it in one. Hence this kind of pattern. But but if you already, like, I think one of the cases where I found as well when updating the samples, where we probably want to introduce what you're saying is where an agent has a set of instructions and you're just passing in. It has a template and it has parameters in that template, and you have no user message because the agent instructions already is everything that you need. And in that case, it feels a bit unintuitive.
Yeah, and also for just refactoring of existing code.
Yeah.
It would, but if you can in some way tell that you can just put in an empty array and it works, because I tried with the passing in null for the first one and that didn't work. So
yeah.
So it's mostly for the migration part.
Yep. Thanks for the feedback.
No problem.
Any other questions on that? Raj, go ahead.
Yeah. So This is new to me. Like, do we have some examples of different types of agents using this pattern? Like, for example, the OpenAI assistant, or the tool calling, or agentic autogen. Do we have any example of how this abstraction is used to kind of compose something with these multiple agents?
Yeah, I can take that one. We've updated our samples that use agents from AutoGen and Azure AI Agent Service and Bedrock as well. I'll drop links to those samples into the chat.
Thanks.
Any other questions on that? If not, I will move along. We do have some guests here today. We have Louise, and I think is in the room with me here, and I think I saw Jeremy online. Louise, if you want to come on mic or come on camera, actually, just wait until you come on mic because we'll get feedback. We'll move that over in the same room, so we'll get feedback. But I'll turn this right over to Louise. Louise is here from Microsoft.extensions.ai. And I know we get a lot of questions about kind of what we're doing in that space, and what their thinking is around that. So happy to just turn it over to Louise and give him a chance to kind of fill you in on what we're doing there. And then happy to take any questions from that, and then we'll move on to general questions after that. So Louise, take it away.
Sweet, thank you. Hey. Good. All right, awesome. Can't do in person. It's been a while. Yeah, so hey folks, my name is Luis. I've been on a few of these calls in the past, but yes, happy to be able to join and talk a little bit more about Extensions AI and some of the work that, the collaboration that we've been having here with Semantic Kernel. If you haven't heard of Extensions.ai, I'll give you a quick rundown of what it is. It's effectively a .NET set of libraries that provides a common set of abstractions. It also provides standard middleware for things like logging, OpenTelemetry, things like that you may be doing in your applications. And the goal here is to effectively enable interoperability and extensibility, right? So as opposed to us going and building our own yet another framework, right? As sort of the .NET team and as a platform team, what we are looking to do with Extensions AI is to again, enable the ecosystem to have a common language, right, to talk. And so Semantic Kernel is part of that. And so if you have looked at Extensions AI, that may look very similar to, for example, some of the abstractions that are in Semantic Kernel, like chat completion service or embedding generation service. And a reason behind that is that that's exactly where those were born, right? So Semantic Kernel, spent a lot of time working with the different providers and the different implementations. And so we're like, hey, what if those just made it lower into the stack, right, closer to the .NET runtime? And that's effectively where Extensions AI sort of came in, right? Now, address sort of the elephant, I guess, in the room, or like maybe some questions that sort of came up. It's like, something that, both Sean and I have heard in the past, like, well, should I be using Extensions AI or should I be using Semantic Kernel, right? And honestly, it shouldn't be an either or type of thing, but it's rather like a better together type of situation, right? And so, currently Semantic Kernel has the chat completion service as well as the embedding generation service, which again is very similar to the abstractions that are in Extensions AI. And so that's kind of where the point of confusion sort of comes in, right? But at the end of the day, what we're hoping for, and I think there's a slide here at the end, what we're going towards is kind of unifying those abstractions and, having Semantic Kernel, and the Extensions AI work seamlessly together, right? And that there's some work that we still need to do there, in both, actually at the technical level and making sure that Extensions AI just seamlessly integrates with Semantic Kernel, but also from the perspective of guidance, right? Like folks are already using Semantic Kernel in their applications, and it's in production and it's working, and for a lot of those scenarios that's great, right? Like ideally you should not have to change your application there, right? But if you're coming in and you're building new applications or something else, or you want to do whatever that may look like, right? Whatever your scenario, you want to make sure that you are supported through that, right? And so like this slide is basically just talking about other pieces of the family. So vector data is one that you may have noticed, sort of came out as V2 of the memory sort of services that Semantic Kernel had started working on, right? And so like the vector data is an extension of extensions.ai for vector data stores. And then the AI evaluation is just also part of the family, and it builds on extension.ai. And what that does is it enables you to, run evaluations on your AI workloads. And so, again, at the end of the day, what we're looking to do here with extensions AI is to, again, foster the ecosystem, Semantic Kernel being a large part of that, right? And enabling Semantic Kernel, for example, right, to focus on the innovation rather than some of these lower level components, right, that are sort of more at the platform level. So I'll kind of pause there in case there's any questions or thoughts in all that I just said.
So Luis, so if we create a semantic kernel instance and we use invoke, but in the extension AI, you have a
and while folks are either typing questions or coming off mute, right? Like one of the things that I'll sort of mention here is, again, right, like we want to the plan is that by build, we'll work with Semantic Kernel folks here to to ensure that the messaging, right, is clear. We know that that's an area that could use work, and so we want to make sure and convey that this is, again, right, this has never been really an either or, but we've just been collaborating the whole time, and we want to continue to do that, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about making you all successful. Yes, Raj.
So I've been using extension AI for a lot of things, and where the only
do you have a question, Raj? I see your hand is up.
Oh, you cannot hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Raj. I guess Luis can't. Can you hear me, Luis?
Yeah, sorry, I was expecting to hear him.
Okay, can you hear me, Luis?
I would if my, yep, I could hear you. Sorry, my speakers were off.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so I've been using extension and also I like the new template. It's really ready to go, but it needs a bit of work. It's too tightly coupled for a lot of the vectors and backends. But one question I have is, I see the extension AI leveraging semantic kernel only for certain things, particularly for the vector store, for embedding generation. So the confusion is, when do you use the iChat completion, from extension AI versus the semantic kernel, the invoking for chat completion, right? So they both seem to do the same thing. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was referring to, like unifying the APIs, right? And I think I have a sample. I don't have it handy here, but like, if you were to think about it, right, what extensions AI is giving you, it's giving you access to a model, and it's giving you, at least in the chat case, right, it's giving you access to tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's all you need, great, right? But when you start building, for example, agents with semantic kernel, right, where you are going to need a tool and you are going to need a model, right? That's a space where, like, because the abstractions, right, haven't been, we're working on unifying them, but they're not quite sort of unified yet, right? And that's where you sort of have that distinction where, like, well, both of these exist, so which one should I use? And so I guess what we're saying here is that, going forward, the thing that we want to make sure, right, is that question doesn't necessarily come up, right? And so, like, for example, if you create, right, today, if you go and create an agent with semantic kernel, one of the things that you'll provide, right, you inject into your agent is an iChat completion service, right? You build it as part of your kernel. And so, if semantic kernel is building on top of extensions.ai, right, that effectively now just becomes your iChat client, right? And you can still continue building agents. You can still continue doing everything that you're doing with semantic kernel, right? But that piece where you're bringing in the model, that chat completion service, if you will, right? That is iChat, the iChat client, right? Effectively.
Yeah, I think that'll be really good, because then, and I think you already have dependency injection, so that the kernel can use the iChat completion bundled into it. Then that makes it really easy. And then you can leverage all the semantic kernel capabilities in terms of the agent tools and function calling. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so like,
Yeah.
again, you can continue using semantic kernel. And today, actually, there is a way to go between, for example, like a plugin and an AI function, and from like a chat client to an iChat completion service. Right. So there are ways to do that today. But like, again, right, the goal here would be to ensure that that distinction or that line is that there isn't that divide, right? And that you can be successful, incorporating these into semantic kernel. Yeah, Wesley.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Raj, there's already methods as well, extension methods on chat client and on the chat completion implement like interfaces for in semantic kernel to convert between a chat client and a chat completion interface. So you can already convert between them back and forth and use the ones from Microsoft Extensions AI in semantic kernel.
So
yeah, and I can drop it here in the chat. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Go for it.
No. So you would do this as part of when you're instantiating the kernel and then using the model and all that. At that time, do you pick the iChat completion injection?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, I can actually show you real quick. Do you mind if I take the screen share for a second? Sorry. Let me just close things, share. Which window am I going to be sharing? Where is my, sorry. Just trying to, sorry, I'm just trying to pull up a sample here just to kind of show you what the state is today. And then, you'll see how, effectively what we'd like to get to. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is just a quick sample, and here I'm using the Azure AI inference set of SDKs, right? And so I'm creating a chat client here. Now, if all I wanted to do here was, send a message to the LLM, right? I would go ahead and kind of structure it this way, right? This is my chat history, the chat messages, and I'd just call get response async, right? And then it would just return some sort of response. Now, how does this work with semantic kernel? So again, right, this is going to look very familiar to you, builder, create kernel, create builder. You're going to notice here that I have my chat client, the one that I instantiated above, and I said that's that extension method that Wesley was talking about as chat completion service, right? And then at that point, my agent, the kernel that I pass in is the one that contains this chat completion service that came from the chat client. And then at this point, this is all semantic kernel, right? And so that point of friction, right, that is here, that ideally what we'd like to get to is where this is just an iChat client, right? And you don't have to do this conversion here.
Yeah.
And then, also, for example, chat history, you notice that here you have a chat history and chat message content, which are a little bit different than the chat message and, just a list of chat messages, which will represent this chat history, right? And so in this case, the chat client portion, right, you can see that it's very light, and all it's doing, it's bringing you the, again, the model and function calling capabilities. But in this case, everything is still sort of, using the semantic kernel set of abstractions, right? And so we'd like to kind of like make sure that this is unified, and semantic kernel builds on top of the iChat client. So you can just use the chat client and the extensions.ai set of abstractions when you're building these workflows with agents.
Yeah, this is really good. And also it's creating a transient, right? So it'll dispose of for every request as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
all your DI just works. Yeah,
all the DI works well. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And so like that's what we're trying to get to, right? And so like, again, in this case, it's what's there today and what works. But again, by building on top of extensions.ai and unifying those, right, you as an end user, right, don't need to know like, well, am I using chat history, or am I using a list of chat messages? Like, which one am I using, or which one should I be using? The idea is just, there's a common set of abstractions that you can use, and Semantic Kernel will sort of, again, build on top of those so that you can just use those. Right? And so that's the idea.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I didn't mean to raise my hand. But I will segue this over, and I'll get my slides back up. Thank you, Luis, for that. Let us know if you have any questions around that. I think the most important thing is that Microsoft.extensions.ai and Semantic Kernel is not an either or decision. It's layering, and we layer on top. That's ongoing work for us to kind of get things migrated over to EMEA. And as Luis mentioned, those APIs are targeting being available with a GA level of quality soon. So you'll see that kind of layering be more explicit going forward. But hopefully that helps, because I know a lot of folks have questions about that. And I think the most important thing is to know that like Louise and I are best friends, and we're gonna high five here. If you do a little,
You can't see it.
folks can see us. There we go. We work together very closely, and I think I'm excited about the future in this space. Move on to general Q&A right now. If folks have any questions, and feel free if you have questions about the common invocation methods or the extensions.ai, we can talk about that as well. I will go through, I see Rasmus have your hand up. I'm just going to grab the one in the chat real quick that I saw from Prasad. Well, integrating with Azure AI Service.net, should we use projects or Semantic Kernel agents with Azure AI? Great question. Again, this is another layering one. We use the project API under the covers with Semantic Kernel. So really the thing to think about is what are you trying to build and what are your scenarios? If you're trying to talk directly, you can think of the projects API as being the wrapper on top of the REST endpoints. And if that's what you want to do, if you want to work at the low level, the projects API works great for that. If you want to orchestrate things together, if you want to use some of the capabilities of Semantic Kernel to build a more complex application, then use Semantic Kernel and use your abstractions on top of that. It's not an either or thing, it's a composability thing. They're composed on top of each other. Good question, though. And I think that's what we see, in general. I think we talked about this with Microsoft extensions.ai, and the same thing with the SDKs in Foundry. Semantic Kernel is going to be the orchestrator that sits on top of those.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Any other questions? If anyone would like to raise their hand or put them in chat. Rasmus, go ahead.
So to understand Luis's your comments, it sounds like you want to take extension AI and make Semantic Kernel switch to that kind of syntax, or are we getting a fourth syntax now in Semantic Kernel? We have the kernel itself, we have the chat completion, we have the agent. Will we get a agent from extension AI version as well, or is this breaking changes, or is it or how would you change from chat history to chat list of chat messages without breaking changes? That's a part I don't understand in this.
Yeah, I mean, our intention is not to break folks. I don't know if Mark, if you have kind of more details of how we're actually planning to do that, or anyone else in the call.
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, so there won't be any breaking changes. Basically, what we're going to do is both will the iChat completion service and the iChat client. Semantic Kernel will support both of those. Right, I'm kind of going forward. But what we're going to do is update all of our samples and all of our patterns to favor iChat client. So for anybody who's starting new, there shouldn't be any confusion. You'll see a nice layered approach and kind of like one set of abstractions. For people who've already invested in iChat completion service, we're going to basically continue to support that group of people. And we're not going to introduce any breaking changes, right? So you can stay using the existing abstractions if you want, but for new people and new projects, our recommendation is use Microsoft Extensions AI. So that's our position.
And I understood correctly, you can do that right now, or was that it sounded like there was a missing part.
No, that's happening. It's, we've been the work Luis mentioned about integrating iChat client. That's been kind of like going in over the last kind of 3 months or whatever, and by the time build comes around, all of that work will be completed, and it should have been completely transparent to anybody who's using Semantic Kernel. But for what'll happen is that when new people come and they look at the samples, they'll just see the new patterns that we're going to advocate, and anybody starting fresh will just kind of avoid this kind of confusion, right? But yeah, our goal very much with Semantic Kernel is we're not going to introduce breaking changes. We're not going to kind of like disrupt people's applications, right? So there shouldn't be any concerns there.
Okay, and we're still keeping the agents like they are, because they can also get a list of chat content message and not chat message. What will we do there? The new things we just saw today?
Yeah, so our agent abstractions are going to build on top of the semantic kernel, kind of like, chat message content. And then under the covers, that may be calling the iChat client, but it will be transparent to you as somebody who implements. If you use our agent abstractions, we're isolating you from any churn that might happen at kind of lower levels, so. And then you should be able to switch between, using Azure AI agents or just pure chat completion agents, and you should be able to use both in your application and kind of combine them together as well.
Okay, so chat message content will stay, despite it not being the same as extension AI, because they don't have that.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Will extension AI get a better way of doing structured output, because it basically sucks compared to semantic kernel, to be honest? You can just say type of in semantic kernel, and you need to provide the schema in extension.ai.
Okay, I'll defer to Luis here.
Yeah, so I'd be interested in hearing, like, in terms of like the structured output and kind of where you're running to. So that's supported today, but like what specifically were you running into issues with?
There's such issues. It's just that in semantic kernel, I can just say type of some kind of object, and it does everything for me. In extension.ai, you need to specify a JSON schema, which is just cumbersome to do.
My understanding is that you don't have to. If you have samples, I would love to take a look. But from my understanding is you should just give it the type when you say get response async, like Jeremy just pasted in the chat. And so that's the way that you do structured output.
Okay, it might just be me not up to date.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to chat. Yeah, take offline and chat with you, and sort of provide guidance there. But yeah, my understanding is that you don't have to provide a schema, right? Like you can just, as Jeremy pasted this code sample there, just give it the C# type, right?
Oh, okay, nice. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, sorry, Raj, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think I've used that the type, the object. I think it's done slightly differently in semantic kernel, where you say response format type of, but here you put that object in the response. I think it's just a variation, but I've used the extension AI when the response by the class type works well. Yeah. So my question I had was, OpenAI is now very aggressive in their agent abstracting many things. Like, for example, their file search, they abstract the whole vector creation, query, and everything, which is a little bit scary where you have no control. But they are really pushing many agent tools in the market, right? I just want to get your opinion on that, and then how do we should we be using that? I like the semantic kernel way. There's a lot more control in terms of using tools, creating vector storage, and using that. But OpenAI abstracts a lot of these, and you make one single call to a file search with a query, and we don't even know where that vector store is. So I just want some of your thoughts on how, just an assessment. What do you think of those OpenAI new agents, the swarm and everything else? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I mean, I like the way that Semantic Kernel does things too, I guess, is the answer. I think, if you think about that, maybe as, one way to think about it is, with Foundry, we have an agent service, and that abstracts away a lot of the search capabilities, file search, web search, grounding, as well. And so, you do have that option, and it's going to depend what you want to do, as a developer for building your application. It can be very beneficial to have that abstracted away. It can be very simple. Now you have a single API, you upload some files, and you can search over them, and it does all that for you. But there's a lot of cases where you want to have that control. You want to know where that data lives. You want to have control of how it's chunked, how it's used, and how you search over it, and what the backing store is. So I don't think it's a one or the other. In 100% of the cases, it's going to depend on what you want to do. Within Microsoft and Foundry, if you want to have that kind of turnkey approach, Microsoft Agent Service is the way to go. And that aligns very nicely with what I think, OpenAI is doing. But with all the capabilities that you now have in Foundry, and having your data, inside the Foundry cloud. And then if you want to have more control, then you can build that with Semantic Kernel. You can use all of the connectors and capabilities that we have within Semantic Kernel to connect to your data. You can deploy it however you want or whichever way you want. The downside being is with more control comes more complexity.
Something else to add is, as well as that, you may have an existing database that you have descriptions of products, for example, in, and you have added a embedding field to that same table that contains embeddings for the descriptions. Maybe you want to search over that and return the whole product object as a response to the LLM, so that it can answer questions about it to the user, both find the product information and answer questions and so on. In this case, it's not a scenario where you just have a PDF file that you're going to upload to the agent service. And in this case, you will need something like Semantic Kernel's vector data abstractions.
Good question, Han. I see you have your hand up.
Hi guys. Hi Sean, Wesley, and Louise. So I just got a general kind of question and statement. It's just I wrote it down in the chat. So I'm looking at the advertised semantic kernel functions plugins. It's working very well, which is good. Obviously, that's a recent addition towards the end of last year. However, I noticed a few things I noticed, and I've got a question I got a question related afterwards as well. When I add the keyword async, because the plugin had originally got async at the end of the semantic kernel plugin name, it didn't seem to pick it up for some reason. I don't know if that keyword is reserved or is a slight glitch. This is from my observation. So I wrote it in the chat. So if I wrote something like search selected upload docs and an async in the method header, it doesn't seem to pick up in the advertised plugins when you feed it to the semantic kernel for some reason. When you take off async, it works. I just checked. I just seen that yesterday. I don't know if it was from observation. Maybe it needs to be looked at. I wasn't quite sure. But that was kind of my first question and statement. I wrote it in the chat just to be clearer.
Yeah, I think Sergey gave a response in the chat around removing the async suffix when importing the plugins. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, a little bit. So the presence or absence of async suffix doesn't influence the way the function is advertised to the LLM. In both cases, whether your function either have async suffix or it doesn't have, the function will be advertised to LLM. And if LLM think that the function needs to be invoked or called, it will invoke it, right? So yeah, that's the explanation.
Okay, I see. So it's kind of a reserved word when it's utilized, when it's picking up, when it's going through the names. Okay, that's fine.
And And I see that you are trying to do kernel.plugins.get function, right? And you are sticking the plugin name and the function name with the async. So, and the reason you can't find it because like Semantic Kernel stripped off this async keyword from that. If possible, do the lookup without the async keyword. But again, so as I said, just it doesn't matter whether the function has async or not. It will be advertised to LLM, and LLM will call the function if it decides to do so.
Okay, sure. Okay, thanks. Thanks for the update on that. And then I've got a second related question. I noticed the more kind of plugins that I added to be advertised, it will make a decision based on if there was more than one. Like, say there was, for instance, the one I'm kind of working on is 5 of them. It will make a decision on 5. And I've kind of asked kind of a similar related question last year. Is there like a prioritization of how the ordering it will go through for the semantic kernel when there's semantic kernel advertised plugins, when you're listing them out? Can you prioritize those in a certain list order? Because that's something I like to have in addition on top of that. And I was just looking at it, and it's just some thoughts related to it. I don't know if you can do that with advertised semantic kernel functions.
No, I think that your request is in the realm of the prompt engineering. So like in the while writing a prompt, you can say, hey, just LLM, I would like you to look at the function I've advertised and like call them in the certain priority. Because like today there is no way, and I haven't heard about any AI vendor who is allowing you to provide advertised functions in a certain order so that AI models can respect that order.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, thanks for the update on that. Thank you. Yeah, that's everything. Thanks for that.
Great. Just going through the chat, seeing if there is anything else. Steve, I see any news on a bundled document vector parsing engine. Is this something Microsoft's going to tackle at some point? I don't know necessarily. I don't know, Wesley or anyone, if you know in particular what we might be doing in that space.
I'm not sure, Steve. If you don't mind coming off mute, what is it that you're looking for exactly there?
Yeah, hey gentlemen. So we have self-rolled our own parsing engine for multiple types of documents, right? PDFs, Word docs, to get vectorized data of our content company-wide. And that infrastructure is, it's quite a bit to maintain. We also utilize Azure AI services for some of the document intelligence stuff and for some specific use cases there as well. And so I was just wondering, getting data, making data clean and available for AIs to use and search through is half the battle, right? With using any type of AI system. So it's a pretty big piece. It's a big overhead for us to maintain. It seems like it would be pretty logical for Microsoft to kind of tackle that problem. That's why I posed the question. We're about to do a refactor on ours, so I want to see where you guys are at and if there's any plans internally for you guys to handle that before we go and do that work.
Sean, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of that, if you're using document intelligence and content understanding and Azure AI Search, that's where those capabilities will come in, in the future, and then we'll plug into semantic kernel as they become available.
I think as well, maybe, Steve, the tricky thing is that a lot of this is probably going to be living in a service that's going to have to have some sort of pipeline that chunks the documents and has retries around generating embeddings and uploading and etc. With like recovery potentially if the service dies. This is probably more of a building a service rather than an SDK, which is probably a little bit beyond the scope of semantic kernel, but yeah, I think there's I can certainly see there being value in having some more of these components readily available. But yeah, it's probably going to be tricky having something like that in an SDK.
Gotcha.
Like an end-to-end
Yeah, that makes
solution
sense.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, that's primarily what we've done is Azure Functions, right? So we can offload that to basically build that pipeline out. Okay. All right. Appreciate it.
Sure.
If I come off mute real quick. Real quick. Yeah, good. Okay. Steve, just to kind of follow up on that one. I don't know if one of the things that if you had seen, so there are these logic apps, I forget what they call them, templates, predefined workflows, right? Which are intended to kind of assist you with composing some of these pipelines, right? And so I'm not sure if that's something that you've tried, as part of your, document ingestion processes.
I have not. I'm not aware of that. If you could post a link, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Check it out.
I'll share it in the chat. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just go through a few more questions I saw in the chat. Eileen, if you have more questions around agents, please come off mute. I'll just answer some of the questions that you put in chat. Does SK support multi-agent group chats, something like that in C#? Yes, we do. Ben posted some links in there with some samples of how to do that. We'll be updating that and improving it over the next couple of weeks as part of our alignment with AutoGen and improving our multi-agent experience, which is kind of going to be the next focus for us. And then also want to make sure to call out our process framework, which is a great place if you do have kind of structured processes that you want to build for multi-agent systems or AI systems. Definitely take a look at that. That's our kind of graph-based approach for building processes on top of semantic kernel and on top of agents. And then I saw you had a follow-up, parallel execution of agents in C#. I think a couple things there. I mean, I think obviously you can run your agents in parallel in your separate threads and so on in your application. If you use process framework, that also has the ability to execute in parallel, do kind of map reduce style of execution within your process. I don't know if anyone else from the team wants to add anything on top of that in terms of parallel execution of agents. If you have any other questions around that, Eileen, please raise your hand.
I can add something.
I don't see anything. I did, Henrik, we did talk about the community toolkit last week. Yeah, Sophia is going to be the main person working on that. But if you would like to know more, get involved, shoot me an email or reach out to Sophia and we can get you connected with that. We're excited for that to happen soon. I did put a link. I'll just call it again. Our documentation has a lot of samples and quick starts in it in the documentation, but I will definitely call out to go look at the samples directory in our GitHub repo. We have over 100 samples for Python and 100 samples for .NET around all the concepts that are used within semantic kernels. So definitely a good place to start if you want to learn more about semantic kernel and how to use it. Yeah, so Orleans as well. So I think process framework has a pluggable runtime, and we're currently focused right now on supporting Dapper as our primary distributed runtime. But Orleans is something that we're also planning to do as well, and that will allow you to do distributed agents and also parallel execution of agents from that as well. Okay, thank you everyone for joining this week. I think we'll call it here. As always, great questions from the group, and I will see everyone next week. Bye.